Hi, I'm Kevin Harrington,
I'm Samba Bachili,
Nina Vaca, Chief Executive Officer of Pinnacle Group,
an original shark from the hit TV show Shark Tank,
CEO of ADS Group.
the largest Latina-owned workforce solutions in America.
I first identified myself as an entrepreneur when I was 15 years old.
My mother and father immigrated here with a suitcase and a dream. I had a front row seat to entrepreneurship. I am living proof of what is possible in this country.
Today, the marketplace is very tough.
The challenge for African market today is its access to capital.
The number one reason why we can't scale as entrepreneurs is access to capital.
What makes Glow so different and so powerful is the access to experts, gurus, mentors, coaches, financiers, venture people, money.
When I started my business, I immediately went to engage with different communities, different platforms. Glow makes that experience digital. A digital platform makes it so much faster and so much easier for you to meet like-minded people.
The financial platform that Glow have that make Glow unique.
Glow is about commerce, Glow is about community, and Glow is about having access to capital.
Glow is an asset to every entrepreneur in this country and globally.
It's about helping you take your business, your idea to the next step.
Hi there, and welcome to Business Acceleration 2.0. This is the show where leaders go to grow, and we're thrilled that you're here with us today. We've got a special guest, Miss Susan RoAne, best-selling author. But before we go there, just a couple of quick notes about Glow. Glow is our sponsor for the show. Glow is Global Leaders Organization, and it's a membership organization that was created specifically for the entrepreneur and accredited investors. Look, as we know, as an entrepreneur, it's really difficult to go out there and run a business, grow a business, raise capital, sell a business. So Glow was created for you, the entrepreneur, to help you do all those things. We have the 4 C's, which are the pillars, the 4 pillars of our foundation. One, it's community, because as an entrepreneur, it's lonely at the top, right? You need your peer-to-peer network of other leaders helping you, teaching you, and learning from. It's about commerce, because as a business, you need to continue to grow your business through transactions. Glow has a marketplace so that you can promote and advertise your company's products and services on the platform. And it's about capital. You never know as an entrepreneur when you're going to need that capital. So Glow's here to assist you, whether it be debt or equity. And then finally, content, which is why you're here today, to hear some of the amazing speakers that we bring to you each Thursday and live in the chapter events. These are individuals that are celebrity CEOs, they're best-selling authors, they're industry experts, and we bring them here to you so that you can continue to learn and grow as an entrepreneur. So let's go ahead and get into it today. Our guest today is a New York Times best-selling author, Miss Susan RoAne. Actually, she's an international best-selling author. She wrote the book called How to Work the Room. And she's here today with us to share some tips and strategies on how to get in and meet some of the right kind of clients and how to interact with them. So without further ado, Miss Susan RoAne. Hi, Susan.
Good. So nice to see you, Michelle. We go back a long time.
Let's not say how long. We do go back a long time. We have lots of guests on the show, that we've known for many years from the speaking industry that are industry experts. So just like you have so much to share with our audience today. So we're pleased and thrilled to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. Lots of things have changed because of COVID. So we do a lot of these online hellos, introductions, and greetings. In fact, it's so common today that when I schedule a meeting and say, ask someone if they can do a quick meeting, quick call, they immediately go to Zoom, right? So what are some things that you've learned on how to interact online on Zoom and other various streaming properties?
One of the things that we forget is that all that applies in person often applies online. If you are in a Zoom or on a stream or a WebEx and you're meeting people, you still have to remember how to greet people, how to smile, how to be welcoming, how to respond. One of the things that's very effective is you get to use the chat, but there are a lot of people that forget to do that. But the other thing is we have to treat online as we would in person. We have no choice. Meetings are there. Events are there. Oh my gosh, I was at a baby shower on there. I was at an anniversary party on Zoom. And I know this is going to sound very, I don't know, old school, but you have to dress for the event you're going to, online as well as in person. I've been to events where I've said, that's not business attire. Not that you need a suit and tie, but you do need to look like you're representing yourself, especially as an entrepreneur when you want people to invest in you.
So Susan, so when you go in, and this happens, I think, a lot for people, maybe they're a little bit shy, right? And they know they need to get out and go to a meeting. What are some tactics to make or to utilize when you go into a new environment where you know no one, and maybe you're a little shy?
Well, I'm going to rephrase that. A lot of us are really very shy because the thought of walking into a room full of strangers actually is our number one fear. Of course, if you do the analysis, spiders are our basic phobia, but the fear of walking into a room full of strangers is commonplace. And it's because and it depends on the year and the research, 80 to 90% of us self-identify as shy. It's daunting walking into a room full of people. So if I can give some tips to all of Glow people, let me just say the first thing you do has nothing to do with getting into the room. It's before you get into the room. It's the preparation, which we as entrepreneurs know we have to do. So the first thing you do is do a little bit of due diligence. What room are you walking into? What Zoom are you going to be in? Who's going to be there? What's the purpose? What's the theme? And, check out Google, check out LinkedIn, check out people's bios, etc., so that you're not walking into something totally cold. Second thing we need to do is prepare how we're going to introduce ourselves. That's in person and online. What are you going to say about yourself? And I am going to share that this is not a 30-second elevator pitch. You're not in an elevator. And even if you were, you shouldn't be talking about yourself for 30 seconds. When we do this thing that's called social introductions, which even happens in business, it's a 7 to 9 second self-introduction. It's something that we used to call, and Susan RoAne still calls it's a pleasantry. It's how we start this, even in Zoom. If you launch into your spiel about you without ever introducing yourself, you're missing the moment where you can actually engage and connect with other people and make them want to engage with you and listen to you. So it's 7 to 9 seconds. And you may ask, how do you know that, Susan? Well, they did research on listening and eye contact, and I forget that it might be a Dr. Nielsen, but I'm not sure. He found that after 9 seconds, people found that eye contact felt like a glare. So 7 to 9 seconds. I'm going to give you a second aspect of it. When you introduce yourself, you link it to where you are at the time. How you might introduce yourself at one of these events might be different than at a friend's daughter's graduation party, or a vendor's party, or an investor's event. You customize that intro to where you are. And then the third aspect of a self-introduction is that, and I learned this from someone I know you all have heard, Patricia Fripp, good friend, wonderful speech coach, said, Susan, tell people don't give their title. Titles change and mean different things. She said, give the benefit of what you do. And when you give the benefit of what you do, you give people something that they can ask a question about, and then you're in a conversation. 3 tips. Self-introduction.
So I've got colleagues that will go into this long dissertation about their successes, right? And what they've done. So I should really go back to them because they're colleagues, maybe in some businesses with me, and go back and say, look, you really should narrow it down specific to your audience and get it to 9 seconds instead of this long diatribe of what you have done and succeeded at, right?
Well, even as you said that they did that, I think you can see that my eyes rolled. I once had someone say to me, I can hear your eyes rolling. When you lose people, no one wants to listen to all your successes. And that's one of the things that has been a criticism of the internet. We all post the things of how fabulous things are. And the reality is, we don't post that which isn't. And when someone does, we go, oh, they're so candid and they're so heartfelt. Going on and on about yourself really isn't how you connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. You think you want to tell someone who might invest in your company all your successes, but you really want to establish relationship and connection first.
Mm-hmm.
People don't connect with how successful you are until they connect with you. Here's a phrase I say to all my audiences when I speak. Bring who you are to what you do. People connect with who you are. I'm not a pet owner, but people will connect. Oh, I have a Bichon. Oh, I'm a golden retriever person. Oh, my youngest is going off to college. Oh, I just have a great niece who, made this high school band. People connect with those little things. I'm from Chicago. Michelle, I can talk to anyone from Chicago, no matter who they are, what their religion, what their race, what ethnicity, because we talk about pizza. And now because of the TV show on Hulu there, we talk about, so where'd you have your first Italian beef? And do you see what I just did?
Yeah. You're connecting with the person, right? That's so good. Yes. Okay, let's talk about small talk, because I know you have your opinions on small talk, right?
Yes.
You walk into a room, you know no one, you've got to create some small talk.
Okay. First of all, I want everyone who's watching, and I want you to tell it to all your friends, stop denigrating small talk. In my research for my third book, What Do I Say Next? What I learned is that the only people who put down small talk were terrible at conversation. Small talk is the biggest talk we do. And I'm quoting, I'm just going to forget the producer whose name will come to me. Corda, Sir Alex Corda, because he said that leads to the big talk. But the small talk is how people connect to us. When you find out you lived in the same neighborhood, your grandparents came from the same part of a different country, you have a same favorite team. Please, people in Chicago talk about the White Sox, the Cubs, the Bears, etc. I think the Bears was the namesake of that TV show. And you see what I just did? You bring in that which seems small to you when you think about your business and that you want to grow it and you want investors. But it's the little things that make us connect to other people, that make us feel that there's something special upon which we build relationships. So A, do not put down small talk. B, small talk, yes, it's the weather. I once heard a weatherman on CNN say, this was his joke. I think it's the only weatherman joke. Oh, we weather people say that people talk about the weather because it's happening to everyone. Right now, there are floods in the Southwest, in Dallas. Right now, where I live in Northern California, we have raging fires and we've had no rain. People talk about the weather. It's a fair subject. It doesn't mean you have insignificant conversational skills. It means you know to start small, because that leads to big once you establish the connection. You walk into a room, let's say you're going to an in-person event. Where are you going? Did you find a parking space? How long did it take? Have you been there before? Does the food look good? And see, I always, and this is going to be my number one tip for in-person events, go to the dessert table first. Why? Because people who are having fun are eating mini chocolate bundt cakes or little eclairs or chocolate chip cookies. And you can always start a conversation with a stranger saying, is that really good? It looks delicious. Oh, I wonder how many calories it has. People talk about food. That's why the group of grandmothers were so smart. They always made us a lot of food because it was a topic of conversation. That's why potlucks are so much fun. Which dish did you bring? And now what they'd say to me is, Susan, where did you buy it? Because nobody ever gets me to make anything. You know, and I'm going to stop myself and say, do you see what I just did? I brought in something about me. People who know me know it's not that I don't cook, it's just that I'm bad at it. So I never offer it for a potluck. And when I do go to a potluck, I'd say, what would you like me to buy? And you know what it is? Have fun with it. But talk about food, talk about weather, talk about traffic, talk about the venue, talk about the purpose. When I've been to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society events, who's there? You'll find out people are there because of a sister, because of a niece, because of a friend, a neighbor. What brings people to where they are in the room with you is a great topic of conversation. Not small, and it leads to really big.
Well, that's a great segue into our next question then, because a lot of our members, they'll walk into a room full of investors and they're going to be pitching their business. So they start with the small talk, introducing themselves, a little bit of the small talk just to get more familiar. How do you then move into the big conversation, the great conversation?
I learned this from someone when I was giving a keynote to one of the major consulting firms. What he would do, and I think it's really brilliant, and this is going to sound like the grammar school grammar teacher I was. What he would do is within a sentence, when he would talk about something, he would add a little phrase. So he might be talking about that he did a foot race, and then he would add, and it was sponsored by so-and-so, which happens to be a client of the firm that we're supporting. And then what he did is by inserting a little business within a sentence, he could give people something that they could connect to if there was that interest, and then he would gauge their interest, and that is how he segued.
Interesting. Okay, so that's really interesting. A lot of our members go to chapter events. Might be their first chapter event. They might not know anyone. You talk about the difference between networking and working a room. What's the difference?
Well, first of all, I wrote a whole entire book called How to Work a Room, and I wrote a separate book, actually my favorite, The Secrets of Savvy Networking, and there was no repetition. So working a room is about circulating, about socializing. It's about how do we comport ourselves? What do we do? What do we say? How do we enter? How do we exit? And I'm going to add that as a tip in this interview, because that's the number one question I get. Okay, I know how to start a conversation. How do I get out before I sweat blood from my forehead? So we will talk about that.
Okay.
But networking is the follow-up process. Networking is what we do when we say to someone, hey, I saw this article I think you might be interested in. It's the follow-up. It's how you introduce people. It's how you respond when introduced. Michelle, we were introduced by someone who knows us both, not knowing I knew you, but immediately I followed up, and you immediately followed up. It's really the way that you help other people build their circles and their networks. So and by the way, in The Secrets of Savvy Networking, I did have a chapter that said, networker make me a match, as a play on Fiddler on the Roof and matchmaker. Savvy networkers are great matchmakers. They're great introducers. They're great. We now call them connectors. That's what we always were. I call them matchmakers. But the people, Michelle, who go to the events, meet the investors, and don't follow up, might as well take the cards they've gotten or the connections they've gotten, toss them in the garbage or delete them. Because if you don't follow up, you got no network.
So what about when you're talking about networking? I mean, some people have two separate lives. They might have their personal network and then they'll have their business network. How can you intertwine those, or should you?
Well, first of all, I'm laughing because I was told this literally almost 40 years ago at Women Entrepreneurs. I was told, Susan, you need to have a business personality. You really are the same. You really need to have a personality for business. And I thought about it for a week. And I thought about it. And then she asked me at the next meeting, well, what have you decided? And I remember saying to her, and thank goodness I had my grandfather's sense of humor. And I had just had a big birthday. And I said to her, I wanted to have two personalities. But since I turned 40, I could only remember one. So I think what we do, yes, I think we have to be a little circumspect in business. We don't blurt out everything. We don't tell people when our kid went off to juvenile hall for the weekend. We don't tell people things that is too much for them to absorb. We have to respect their need for our privacy and filters. On the other hand, if you're the person that's out there running races to raise money for a charity, why wouldn't you tell your business friends? They would want to donate. They would want to support you. And it's a way of alerting people, maybe this is something you'd want to support. So I only have one personality, and that's by design. And I would say this, we need to separate out to a degree, but the other thing is bring who you are to what you do. Your fun personality that people will connect with might be the person who is the personal person who runs races. I know a brain surgeon who also is a Stanford football supporter and fan. And I will say this, and I hope no one else who knows me is insulted. This brain surgeon makes the best chocolate chip cookies I've ever eaten. Two sides to a personality, because we have to be creative and we then have to do brain surgery. By the way, when you say things to him like, well, it isn't brain surgery, he kind of looks at you.
Okay, wait. So in networking, and I get the fact, bringing your personal relationships, especially if you're out raising money for a nonprofit or something like that. But sometimes networking has a kind of a dirty name attached to it, right? It's kind of it's something that sometimes you don't want to bring your personal into. Are you saying that throw that out, that's not the case, or you're saying just be careful with what you do bring to both conversations?
First of all, I think what you just said is brilliant. We all should be careful about what we bring to conversations. Mm-hmm. That really is a good bellwether. Networking, I wrote an article literally 40 years ago, maybe it was, I think it was 39 years ago, called Networking Beyond the Buzzword. And in one of and I think I used it in a book because I self-plagiarized, but the idea that networking is a dirty word, I said, look, I was a grammar school teacher. I can give you a list of objectionable dirty words. Networking's not one of them. But networking is perceived as a process also that feels like using people. And I'm going to say this. I know people that we can identify them as users. They are the takers. You know who they are. But the truth is, We need to think of the people in our network as people who want to help us because we would help them. So my femtor, by the way, she said I could never call her a mentor because she was female. And she made up this word. Sally Livingston once said to me, Susan, networking isn't using unless you're a user. She said, networking is utilizing resources, but also being the person who shares and gives resources. So if you're the person that shares and gives, asking someone for help is okay. But I'm going to give you a caveat, Michelle, because this just happened. I don't have children, but I'm still Auntie Susan and Grandma Susan to several. And I was down at Stanford and was having lunch with our PhD student who said to me, thinking I didn't know anything, have you ever heard of crypto? And I'm looking at her and I said to her, oh, really? One of my friends is known as the crypto queen. Well, as it turns out, she goes, well, can you introduce her to my partners, blah, blah, blah. Would you do that? And I said, of course I would. And I made the introduction. Now, when I do an introduction, I always want to do it on email because I want it to be personal, personable, factual. I'll add in a link from LinkedIn, something from Google, so that people could read more. But I only will introduce people I like. And I always notify that and say, this is someone who I really like and trust, because I think that's important. Because then people will be nicer to the people you introduce them to if they know you really like and trust them. And I never introduce anyone whom I don't like, respect, or trust, even if they're the top person in their field. It's just I've worked too hard to have a network to introduce someone that I find questionable.
Right.
Here's what happened. The person that I introduced did the big ask too soon. And I told you this whole story by way of saying, when someone introduces you and you have something that you need, a favor, help, the big ask, don't be a big, you know what, ask without the K. You have to have some kind of connection, some kind of communication before you launch into what you need that person to do. Why would they want to do it?
Right.
You don't have a sense that you're trustworthy, likable, knowledgeable.
Gotcha. Now I know you also, wait, by the way, I like that Fintor. That's actually very clever. That's
Thank
good.
you. And I quote her because someone else ripped off that term and I begged them not to. Sally Livingston made up that term and I put it in every book and someone else trademarked it. So I loved it, and may she rest in peace. It's the way of keeping her, shall we say, here.
Oh, that's great. So I know that you have some tips, because when you're networking, you might come across someone where they went, oh, it's so good to see you again. And you've forgotten who they are or their name. You've got some tips on that, right?
Yes. First of all, there are a lot of people that teach memory stuff. And I'm here to say, don't put a cat in a vat and on a hat on your head. You don't have to do that. Here's the best way to save time is you look at the person and say, and someone told me this who was a literary agent in the romance field. She would say, oh, I know you. She said, but you have the advantage over me. You remember names and I don't. Can you help me out?
Ah, that's very good.
But nowadays, I have to say, we are all so busy and so overwhelmed. Nobody remembers anything. And people will say things to you. It happens to me all the time. I walk into a room. I don't know why I'm there. And by the way, that's at all ages. So just tell people the truth. Now, I will give you some ideas of what to do, especially when you're in a room together with people. First of all, if it's an event that you're wearing name tags, keep them on your right side because that's the line of sight vision with your right hand. That's number one. Number two, don't fill them out in pen because nobody over 20 can read them. Make sure that they are filled out in a marker so we can do a casual glance. And it's easy when it's the right hand, we can do a quick glance and not get caught. If you put the name tag on the left side, you can see me switch my head to look at your name tag. So make it easy for people to connect with you. The other thing I learned is when I spoke to a group in El Paso, oh, this must be my Texas time, I don't know. A gentleman who'd been in the facility business said, Susan, oh, I know, he worked for the Harlem Globetrotters, Manny. Manny said, tell people this, when you're in a room, even if you know that person's face, always put out your hand and say your name. Really? And he said, yes, because most people respond in kind. They'll say their name, and then no one's struggling for a name. So literally, it's what my ex-husband said, we teach people how to treat us. Say your name, because if you forgot their name, guess what? They forgot your name.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah, that's a great tip. That's a wonderful tip. Okay, I know you're an entrepreneur too, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you've been running your own business and you've had ups and downs with business, just like all the entrepreneurs that are tuning in and listening. Any advice for an entrepreneur? Some of them are actually out raising capital, getting funding for their business. So any tips that you want to share?
Yes. First of all, I live in the San Francisco area. So I drive Sand Hill. So in terms of investors, et cetera. Number one, we were at an event with Guy Kawasaki. He said one of the investors, I forget, there's a name for it. It's called your family. So family and friends are good investors. So here's the Susan RoAne tip. Be really nice to that uncle on the other side of the family. But the second one is, if you're in business, when I started my speaking business 1,000 years ago, I had the good sense to treat it like a business. I made sure I hired a bookkeeper. Why? Oh, sure, I could learn to put those little numbers and things. Why would I want to? There's someone else that loves doing that. And you support the economy when you hire someone who loves checking boxes and putting numbers. So then you could be left to do your reading, write your speeches, do your marketing. Hire people who are good at what you don't like and are not good at doing. That's number one. Second thing is just realize that everything you do is really PR and marketing for your business. You are the number one marketer. So I know that a lot of people don't carry cards anymore, especially where I live in the Bay Area. They say things like, well, you can look me up on LinkedIn. And by the way, when I was the keynote at a LinkedIn conference down here, I said that to a woman, do you have a card? And she said, oh, you can look me up on LinkedIn. What she gave me was not a card, but one of my best lines that I use in my talks, because I then followed that story with, really? You just gave me homework? If someone is a person who might want a card, keep 5 cards in your wallet. Not everyone is going to run to LinkedIn, because another thing about LinkedIn, oh, we can connect on LinkedIn. And then nobody goes back to LinkedIn to communicate with you. So we have to be smart enough to market every way that the other person needs us to stay in contact with. The phone, the cards, LinkedIn, Insta, whatever. Be prepared. A lot of people say you sound old school. Yes, I am. I even wrote my books with pencil and paper. So, and for those of you that think you're going to write a book, remember, pencil and paper still produces best-selling books and best-selling authors.
Okay, so let's just remind everyone that your books, How to Work a Room, you've got several books.
I have several books. I consider them my legacy, but I don't have kids, so I call How to Work a Room my firstborn.
And then, so anyone that's listening, they can go out, they can buy your books on Amazon. They can find you at susanroan.com, correct?
Yes. And
Yes.
if you want tips of the day, some fun, because one tweet I did after I had an ice cream cone for dinner, I put a picture of it on Twitter and said, sometimes dinner comes in a cone. And people love that because who admits that they ate ice cream for dinner? But I give a lot of tips. Follow me on Twitter, either at How to Work a Room or at Susan RoAne, SusanRoane. And the other thing is there are a lot of other books that I've written, but you can always, anyone that's listening, watching now, if you have a question for me that I haven't answered, and because of my relationship with Michelle, you can email me and I promise I will answer you. And that's Susan at SusanRoAne.com. But now I'm going to turn into the fourth grade teacher that I taught next to in San Francisco a gazillion years ago. Edith Rush said to her class, don't aggravate your parents if you don't understand the homework. Call me. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you have a question, 415-461-3915. You can call me and we'll come up with an answer. Don't aggravate yourself. You won't be aggravating me. I'd love to help you.
Oh, Susan. So building your network, aren't you?
Well, I'm really trying to get my phone to ring. I haven't heard it because everyone's texting.
I love it. Well, this has been fantastic, Susan, which I knew it would be. How to work a room. You heard it from Susan. Thank you for listening. And Susan, thank you so much for joining in from us. From Glow to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And for all those listening, stay tuned for next week, next Thursday. Be sure to tune in and come here to help build your own personal growth and business growth. Until then, stay safe and God